Welcome to ATD's Talent Development Leader podcast, featuring monthly conversations with the greatest influencers in the talent development field. We cover the latest trends, hot topics, and future-focused ideas that current and aspiring TD leaders need to know. Learn more by visiting www.td.org and searching for Talent Development Leader podcast. Today, I'm joined by Julio Zelaya, a visionary at the intersection of technology, education, and organizational transformation. As an Amazon best-selling author and recognized leader in educational technology, Julio has revolutionized how we think about digital learning. His latest book, ChatGPT: How to Boost Your Business with AI, showcases his deep understanding of how artificial intelligence is reshaping both educational and business landscapes. With an impressive academic journey including studies at the University of Pennsylvania, Tulane University, and certifications from Harvard, MIT, and Cornell, Julio combines academic rigor with hands-on experience. As the co-founder of Escalaris and Bright Domino, he has demonstrated how technology can revolutionize education at scale. In his role as Director of Business Development at the RBL Group, Julio leads digital transformation initiatives that are redefining the future of organizational learning. His unique expertise has made him a sought-after advisor to business leaders globally. Don't miss the opportunity to hear his valuable insights on the future of education and technology. Follow Julio on LinkedIn and subscribe to Power Bites, his daily newsletter, where he shares innovative ideas about the convergence of technology, learning, and organizational development. Hi, Julio. Thank you for joining me today.
I'm very excited to be here, and it's always a pleasure to collaborate with other fellow learners.
Absolutely. Well, today we're talking about learning technology strategies. In today's digital age, leveraging technology is crucial for talent development leaders to effectively scale learning across their organizations. Today's conversation will cover leading practices in the digital solution space, emerging trends in EdTech, and of course, the ever-popular conversation around AI and learning. In fact, Julio, let's start there. You're a current student at University of Pennsylvania, pursuing a doctoral degree. Can you tell listeners what you're learning as you research AI's impact in education and the evolution of AI-powered learning?
So this has been a journey that is changing every day. We began learning about AI almost more than 50 years ago. But then all of a sudden, once ChatGPT launched its popular chatbot just 3 years ago, not even 3 years ago, everything changed because we learned how to actually apply AI to our lives. So in my studies, I found that as a first thing, that everything's changing. I could say something today that in 6 months could be completely obsolete. So I think that's my first takeaway, is that we need to be eternal students. We need to make sure we're learning new things. And this is the reason we're here. We're trying to share some of the new things, but the world is changing in a way that's more rapid than ever. Once technology takes place, it becomes an exponential rhythm of change. And we begin thinking of new things in a way that we have not thought of before. So I found that there's a lot of excitement, but also a lot of fright regarding AI and regarding new technologies. This is true with learners. This is true with newer generations. There was just a study published just a couple of days ago regarding how teens are looking at big tech companies. And they're very worried about data privacy. They're worried about, okay, who owns the property rights? How do you train AI? And you're seeing in people like teenagers that usually are early adopters of technology. So even newer generations, you're seeing that there's this dual-edged sword, right? A lot of excitement, a lot of wonder, amazement of what can be done using newer technologies, but also some of us are very scared of the implications. We're seeing a lot more cyber attacks. We're seeing a lot of problems in mental health by using these technologies. So it all comes down to how do we use and leverage these technologies. As a summary, I'm learning a lot. I say I'm an eternal student, and that's something we need to make sure we're always learning. And also, it's a dual perspective,
Mhm.
both wonder and both a pinch of salt.
Yeah, I like that. And I think that's one of my favorite things about working with this industry, right? Talent development professionals and leaders are, as you said, forever students, right? They are in this profession largely because they love to learn and they love to inspire others and empower others to learn. I do think it's interesting what you said about just the rapid pace of change and what we know today will be obsolete in 6 months or will be different or more advanced. Any thoughts or have you mulled over how to kind of stay on top of all of it? And maybe it's impossible. Maybe we just all do our best and, learn as much and as quickly as we can. But I do know there is an element of kind of that overwhelm that I can't keep on top of this fast enough.
And you're exactly right. We need to become curators of content of sorts. I've changed several of my routines every day. So, for example, I love to hear podcasts. I love to hear newsletters. I spend a lot of time in airports or in traffic. And that is something where I can be on top of my game. I try to choose some of the themes that interest me. So, for example, in my case, I'm very interested in technology, in entrepreneurship, and in education. So now, even with ChatGPT, with the latest version of tasks, you can say, okay, at every 8 o'clock, curate a newsletter for me with these topics in mind. So every single day, ChatGPT can send me an email with a curated newsletters of things that interest me. We can also use technology to become experts in any field, but it all comes down to you are curious about. Personalization is one of the greatest benefits of using technology. And we can now curate our own interests on what I'm pursuing. And I've seen this with my kids. I have two kids, Juan Ignacio, he's 16, and Natalia, she's 13. And although they're my kids, we talk about these things every single day, they're completely different. And their interests are amazingly apart from each other. But now, using technology, we can curate something that sparks their own interest and their own journey. So I think it all comes down to first, pick what you're interested about. Once you want to learn about something, you become a student that wants to learn, that wants to experiment more with that. And second is try to curate based on your own preference and learning. I love to hear about things, so I tend to privilege that. But some people might find documentaries, some people might find reading in any format their preferred method of learning. The key idea is let's keep on learning because there's too much that's changing every single day.
I love that. I love the email idea. I'm going to steal that for myself. So at times, and you obviously are doing a lot of research now, a lot of learning on your own, very involved in academia. And I know at times that doesn't always translate, right? What you're learning in research doesn't always translate into practice. Curious what your experience has been when implementing some leading AI tools in your role at RBL Group.
So I've had the huge blessing to have both hats of a practitioner and of a scholar. And that's a huge blessing because I founded an online school, Escolaris, which is the first online school accredited by the Ministry of Education in my home city of Guatemala. That's a lab where we can innovate, we can implement things. So just as a matter of an example, I'm traveling to Las Vegas with my partner to Tech Knowledge. There, we're learning the newest things, the newest trends in AI and technology. But after that, our plan is to have a debrief with our team and hopefully try to implement some of those things. And that I leverage to what I'm learning as a scholar. You'll see, for example, that some of the papers published today use technologies that happened 6 months ago. So some of the findings you might find today in scholarly papers might use obsolete technology. And that's the way science is moving. So we need to make sure that we read both the scholarly papers, but knowing that some of those studies might have happened a year ago or 6 months ago. And some of the key technologies they use might be completely different today. So I have another lab, which is the RBL Group, founded by the HR guru, Dave Ulrich. We have the possibility there to lead great research projects regarding HR professionals, regarding learners, regarding leaders. And we find that especially timing is of an essence when you're talking about technology. That's the main gap, because we might know something in theory, but applying it is a completely different scenario. I'll put another key variable. I work with a lot of people from the US, but also from Latin America. And trust me, even saying Latin America, each country is completely different. So what might work in Guatemala might not work in the Dominican Republic, for example. So we need to make sure we take into account the cultural differences, the learners, their preferred methods of learning, and also which tool might apply in one context, but might not apply on the next. Another example, there are places in my country with very limited internet access, or even families that might use one same phone for the household. So that is something we might think, okay, that's not my case, but that's very different in other places in the world. Maybe we take for granted internet access or the access to the latest technology, or even having more than one computer at home. There are places where those variables are immensely different. I've had a huge blessing where I can learn amongst the best of my peers at the University of Pennsylvania. They're brilliant scholars. I can learn. We can take one idea and research it and see, okay, this is happening, but also having the great advantage of putting it into work, both in my school, both in RBL, which is a very practical approach where you can test your ideas with clients, with different companies. So I think we need to be a bit of both. We need to be scholars, make sure we get the best ideas and research those ideas, and also put them to the test.
I appreciate your nod to context here. I hear a lot from folks in the field. They're hungry for case studies, right? They want examples of how other people are doing it and essentially to see, well, then how can I take this and apply it where I am? But your point to, every country obviously is different. Every home, every organization, all of the nuance to take into account is such a good point.
Yeah, and also even language, because I'm bilingual English and Spanish, but I've learned that some words that I use in English might mean a completely different thing in a different city or in a different country. And the same happens in Latin America. One word, people might, when you say it in a big room, they might, oh my God, he said that word. And in my mind, it's okay. It means a completely different thing. So it's a matter of language. It's a matter of culture. It's a matter of industry. It's a matter of organizational cultures, because even inside of organizations, the cultures are completely different. They have their own rules and their own unspoken rules. So I think it's a matter of how do we make sure we learn about the learners first?
Love it. What a blessing to have those perspectives. And as a faculty, as a facilitator, that's a fantastic lens for you to bring to your students.
Yes.
It's wonderful.
Yes.
You mentioned this a little bit earlier when you were talking about kind of the double-edged sword of AI, kind of the wonder and also the ethical implications. I'd like to dig into that a little bit more, because I do hear that a lot from TD leaders when considering AI and learning. And of course, certain industries, you have to be much more careful with compliance and regulatory issues. But what are some practical approaches that you would recommend folks use to responsibly implement AI-driven learning solutions?
So I think it's a matter of 3 steps. The first is the ethical usage. Learn about what are the ethical uses within my company. There are companies that have very defined policies regarding what's the ethical usage of AI. But if not, we can propose a framework. So the idea is, first, how do I use this in a good way? That's the first thing, the ethical usage of AI. The second step is the data management. It's not the same, for example, if I would recommend using AI within an insurance company where I know that medical records are extremely confidential data, or for example, in schools where you're talking about the privacy of minors, whereas in some companies you can test out ideas with non-confidential information. So it depends on what's your data management strategy. Learning more about, okay, what's very confidential data, what is data that I can use broadly. And the third is experimentation. So I've seen that a lot of companies, a lot of individuals are in step 1 or 2, and they don't move to step 3. They might say, okay, I don't know what's the policy. I don't know what's the data management or how does this tool in particularly work. So therefore, I don't use it. So I think it's a matter of doing 3 steps. What are the ethical implications? Is this something that I need to take a double step? Do I have to ask for legal counsel or for IT counsel? So there's a lot of, and by the way, everything's changing because, for example, when OpenAI launched its ChatGPT tool, some of the data management and the ethical implications have changed radically to the newer versions. So now there's a lot of systems into place where your data is stored in a different way. It's used in a different way for training purposes. So it's a matter of learning. What are the ethical implications? What are the data implications? But third, don't stop experimenting. And by the way, since everything is changing so rapidly, just a matter of this week we saw that a new Chinese platform called DeepSeek changed the rules of the game. So we saw that on Monday. We saw the stocks of huge companies such as NVIDIA crash because of this. But also we're seeing a lot of data leaks by the end of this week using the same platform. So we're seeing that everything's changing extremely rapidly. And that's what's called the Jevons paradox. And when something increases in usage and increases also in efficiency, it creates more usage. So now we're seeing, for example, models that are more efficient, but more people can use them. We're seeing models that are cheaper, but also more computers, more people can use them embedded into their applications. So that creates a scale effect. We're seeing that models are getting cheaper, faster, better, but also the rules of the game are changing. So I think it's a matter of don't be scared of a technology. As Marie Curie would say it, we're scared of what we don't know. And I think AI is similar to the example Marie Curie used, where she said that science is like a room with no lights. And you are scared of a room with no lights, but once you put the light on, you begin to see what the reality of the room is actually like. So I think it's the same with AI. We tend to be scared of AI because we don't know it and we don't know what the potential benefits are. But somebody like myself that I've experimented with this, I've seen both sides of the story. I've seen, of course, it changes the workplace. It does, it changes, but I've seen the huge benefits. I can do things now creatively in my learning projects with my students that I could not do without the help of maybe 40 to 50 people working for me. So it has democratized a lot of capabilities. And now it's a matter of how we use them. So that's the reason I've become an AI evangelist of sorts. I've tried to demystify this technology. Just imagine this, and in the past, we needed to learn a language in order to understand computers. Now computers have learned our language. So that's a paradigm shift. We can communicate with computers using our natural language, and it understands even the nuances of how we communicate things. So that's amazing.
It is amazing. And I love the charge to get a little uncomfortable, right? Do your due diligence, as you said, the kind of steps 1, step 2, but experiment, turn on the lights. Yeah, get in there. And I do agree that once you do, it becomes less scary. And you also build confidence, right? That I can learn these tools, I can apply them, and you see how your work is just, your efficiency skyrockets. As you said, being able to do something that you would normally need 40 or 50 people support. So excellent examples. Thank you, Julio.
It's very important for the people listening to us. Don't outsource your criteria, because this is working with AI, not substituting our own brilliance, our own creativity, what makes us human. We need to work with the assistance of AI. Deloitte has just launched a huge study based on their findings on AI in executives and in business. And the main reason, more than 45% of people say, I'm not using AI because it makes mistakes and I cannot afford a huge mistake in my company. So if we know that AI makes those types of mistakes, it's not perfect, we need to make sure we double check. We use our criteria because that's what I think it's the biggest risk. AI is so convincing and it writes in a such compelling way, it might trick us into thinking it's flawless. And it's not. If you can challenge the AI and it said, oh, sorry, Julio, I made a mistake, you can challenge it. But that's where your own uniqueness, your own criteria comes into play. So I'm recommending teachers, facilitators, faculty members, we need to teach more critical thinking. We need to make sure that we are training learners not for the answer, but for the right question. How do you find that curiosity and always double check what the AI is producing? Because it's not perfect and it will not be perfect. It works very similar to the way we humans think, and we think in different ways. As a matter of fact, there was a paper just published where the researchers found the reason why models like O1, for example, the reasoner by OpenAI, or DeepSeek, they tend to produce poor math results in some specific challenges. And the reason is they give up very easily. That's AI right now. So they go into a train of thought and maybe they say, maybe this is not right. Same as humans, maybe if you had just spent more hours on that, maybe you would have your breakthrough. Great advice for everyone would be, yes, let's use it, let's experiment, but don't outsource our own humanity. Don't outsource our own criteria.
Yeah, and certainly humans aren't perfect. We make mistakes, right? Yeah, you got to build AI's perseverance, endurance muscles in some of those instances. So let's switch gears a little bit and talk about the talent ecosystem. I know that's a big topic for listeners and something that you're quite familiar with in your work as well, especially the role of learning technologies to drive personalization at scale. So a truly learning-centered ecosystem is one that can thrive in constant instability and change, which we've been talking about. And it's one whose components go beyond traditional employees, traditional careers, and even traditional roles. And where every learner has their own personalized path to learning. So how can emerging tech enable this talent ecosystem, this new ecosystem that we're in, that we're moving toward, while also maintaining efficiency?
So last year I was with Juan Ignacio celebrating his 15th year birthday, and he wanted to go to Europe. So we went with the family to Europe and we went to Greece. And it was amazing just to think how people learned in those days in Greece. And we're reflecting, can you imagine being here with Aristotle, asking questions, with Plato, just asking questions. And we reflected on how learning actually works. There's this one-on-one approach where I can ask questions that interest me, and I can have an expert giving me guidance. So when I reflected on that moment, that people love to ask their own questions. They're owners of their own journey. They know what interests them, what they need the information to apply it, so that, getting back to current days, you can have your own expert 24/7. You can ask all questions without being scared of being ashamed of the questions you ask. You can say, I don't get it. And you have a ever patient technology or a teacher or a mentor that can have that patience and say, okay, I'll explain it in a different way. I'll explain it in a way that you might get it. So for example, Natalia loves soccer and she loves every single analogy of soccer. So now I can use AI to explain everything in a way that she understands it. You can imagine my different AI technologies, they speak in soccer analogies. They speak in the soccer language, which gets Natalia's attention immediately. So I think that's a great way to think about our current state. We can have technology to personalize the process. So, for example, I can have a great curator of content that says Julio is very interested in entrepreneurship, in business, and in technology. So let's curate content where Julio will enjoy it the most. But also, that same technology can answer infinite questions that the same learner might have. It's a great way to democratize what learning is all about. You might have the best faculty, and usually the best faculty members, what do? They're knowledgeable, but they're also very passionate about sharing that knowledge. They're very passionate about seeing the actual results of the learner. So it's not about them, it's about the learners. And it's one of the possibilities that AI can produce and these technologies. I've seen it, for example, in Escolaris. We have more than 1,500 students every year that enroll in our virtual programs. So it's a K-12 school, and we see teenagers that, for example, they go on their own learning paths. And the same people that would say, I hated school with a different technology and making sure their own paths are customized, they say, I'm enjoying this. I loved it. I didn't know learning could be so much fun. But it's the process, it's the design. How do we make sure we use this? So there are different applications of this. I've just completed a course using a platform called Mindstone. And it's an AI platform to teach AI. But it has its own chatbot, and I can test out, for example, prompting. I can copy my prompt, and it gives me instant feedback and said, Julio, you're doing this correctly, but you might do this differently. And it talks in a way that it's similar to talking to a friend that knows me for my whole life. That is very amazing. The best teachers do. But now you can have access using the latest technology for every single learner. And I get amazed when I think of this. The worst technology is the one that we have right now. It's getting better. So we're seeing, for example, that there are now models that you can use without internet. Can you imagine the impact of that in the whole world, in places where there's no access to the best faculty members? That's the reason we founded Escolaris, for example, because we said, okay, in Guatemala, the access to great education lies in the capital city, but that's not the case for rural areas of the country. Or even people that might be excellent athletes, for example, they want to train abroad, or very talented people. We have chess masters, for example, that are training abroad, and they cannot fit into the traditional way of learning. They can customize their own learning journey. And that's one of the possibilities that technology can do. Can you imagine, for example, once we can have accessible goggles with augmented reality, we can say, okay, can you imagine being in this place, what happened here? The Native Americans, what happened here? Or the species that used to roam in this same place. So everything can turn into a customized audiovisual experience, and the possibilities are endless. Now, the dangerous part. I'm seeing more interest in business than in learners. I see that learners are more scared of, okay, this is going to change everything. And they're very scared. And we're right to be scared. But the possibilities are so immense that we need to make sure, how do I experiment this in my class? How do I make sure I put this into practice? Because we're seeing it more applied in the business areas. And I think we need more great facilitators, more great teachers, because for me, learning is the only tool that actually bridges that gap of inequality in the world. As I said before, I'm a forever learning. I'm paying for more studies. I already had a doctorate. Even my kids say, why are you doing another doctorate? You're crazy. But I'm willing to spend in what I deem the most important. That education gives you wings. It brings you a new vision. And I've seen it. There's an example I love to share. This was like 10 years ago. We went to a place where they gather garbage, a garbage disposal for the city. And we went with our kids. And what we did is we read to the sons and daughters of the people that worked in those garbage disposal places. We read them books. It was so amazing to see how their eyes lit up and they began imagine themselves as people who could do business, that could be entrepreneurs, that could be royalty, that could be changing the world. And it's powerful because vision is not what you see, it's in your mind. And you can change the vision of a whole generation just by changing their core beliefs that you can do things. It's not what you're seeing. You're not predetermined by your circumstances, but you can change. And I'm so passionate about education because that's the gift you can give to somebody else.
So good. So much there. And I think, as you said, the kind of instilling this same vision into learning, right? That people grab hold of that beyond just the huge adoption in business. And I'm so glad, we'll touch on this in a bit, but that you're teaching this course for the new ATD, Penn Graduate School of Education Talent Development Certificate, because I think that's the right audience for them to kind of grab this vision and get the tools. I think, too, the idea that so many learning professionals, learning leaders are stuck on motivating learners, right? And improving the value and the ROI of learning. But if you get some of these principles in place and you really tap into people's intrinsic motivation, right? You said at the beginning, what are people curious about? Like, figure that out and use these tools to deliver that to them. I mean, there's no stopping them then from what they're going to want to learn and how they'll apply it to their work. So yeah, so much good stuff there.
Yeah, and you're right. It's not the extrinsic motivators. It's those intrinsic. This is what I'm passionate about, what I want to devote my life to. If we can tap into those motivators, you can change absolutely everything.
We've talked a lot about, some trends, obviously, lots of what's bubbling up in learning technologies in the digital solution space, AI. What else, as far as EdTech specifically goes these days, are you seeing, are you experiencing? We talked about your Power Bites newsletter and podcast. Would love for you to share with folks too where they could access that. But what are you most excited about? And do you think TD leaders should follow?
It's a matter of one word, convergence. So technology is converging. And when you have convergence of different technologies, everything will be moving more rapidly. So for example, we're seeing faster internet. That's one trend. Second trend, more accessible internet. We're having the SpaceX of the world, the Starlink. We're having the Amazons of the world trying to figure out, okay, how do I make internet more accessible to more people using satellite technology? So you have faster internet, you have more internet available, you have cheaper manufacturing of microchips, and you have more power with less price. You have more powerful personal devices, you have more powerful cameras, you have more powerful AI models working. So if you have those trends, you see convergence. Some of the things that will happen in the future, we're having the robotic era. That's also going to happen in the next 5 years. So we'll begin to see robots that will have the ChatGPT moment, but for robots. That sounds like science fiction, but you'll see it in the next 10 years, that the technology is getting cheaper and we'll have our own, similar to Iron Man when he had Jarvis. That robotics, that's one trend that I see. The second is Ray-Ban, for example, with their alliance with Meta, their Ray-Ban goggles, they're beginning to use some of the latest in AI. It's a $350 gadget where you can say, okay, where am I? Tell me a story about this place. We're seeing a lot of more wearable technology with high intelligence. That will also happen in the next 5 years. Maybe we will have glasses that have augmented reality and artificial intelligence, the age of personal robotics, and we'll also see more powerful models that understand the multimodal of the world. So we'll have AI that understands context, that can see reality, that can model the laws of physics. That's something very important because AI understands language, understands pictures, but might not necessarily understand depth, for example. That's the reason Tesla is working a lot in training using the cameras in the cars. So they're training their models to understand the physics of the world. Imagine what I'm sharing in the word convergence. So we will see more high technology converging into one. I'm expecting, for example, for iPhones to have access to internet using satellites in the very near future. They've started using that. They've just signed an alliance with Starlink. So in the near future, I see very connected wearables with access to large language models where we can do more of the things we needed more powerful computers to do. That also is crucial for learning design. If we know that in the future everything is going to be more accessible, that learners will have access to these tools, how do we design an experience tailored for those learners in particular? Take advantage of those changes. For example, on the early days when we took a flight and every single seat had its own screen. Now we don't have that. We have seats that have a place for our phones. So even airlines are saying, okay, how do we take advantage of this trend that people have their own device? We can connect it and we can leverage on top of that. So the same analogy goes to learning. So maybe the schools of the future might take that into account, that people are more connected, and how do we learn from other, like social media, for example, the way we are hooked on social media, but using the same methods, the same brain science behind that, but for engaging learners. How do we make sure we're up to date? It's an algorithm personalized to their preference. That's the reason TikTok is so addictive. It learns about the person using it. So the same could be applied to learning. So I'm very excited to see that more technology, more powerful technology will be available at lower costs. So I think convergence, and also it's going to be a matter of democratizing a lot of these useful tools for learners worldwide.
I think that's one part that gets me most excited, the access, the democratization of it all. And you've been talking about, too, asking the right questions. And I think that's something that is important for folks who are leaders in the profession to spend time on, right? To get beyond the day-to-day and think about these things in the sense of, what can I do now to prepare my organization, to think about new capabilities needed, to consider the necessary changes that will take place, So kind of spending time in that headspace as a leader, I think, is so critical.
And I would advise leaders to apply a three-step approach similar to how doctors learn. See one, do one, teach one. Let's see how AI works. Great. Now let's do something using AI. Let's do a video, let's do a podcast, let's do a summary, let's do an email, and then teach somebody else how to do it. That three-step approach, it's great for leaders to learn more about this and get all of the organization into this learning space.
Well, Julio, as we wrap up today, I would love to hear, in your recent research and the ongoing schooling that you're doing, as your kids joke with you about, and or your work, what has surprised you recently? What's caused you to pause and think, And I imagine a lot does, because I can tell you're a thinker, you're a learner. So it might be hard to narrow it down just to one.
What has surprised me the most is that there's a lot of people that have not seen the possibilities this can give to humanity. That what surprises me the most. Some people are very skeptic, and it's like, this doesn't exist. Been so surprised by that we're seeing everything changing. And this is, for me, the technological change, the most important change that has happened after the internet. For me, this is the most important change. And my deepest aha moment is that some people have not seen it. They have not realized how deep and profound this change is. I thought, okay, everybody will get this. How deep this change is, how this will change everything. I remember I was in a plane with my fiance, and I saw the first version of ChatGPT. It was a couple of months before it was released to the general public. And I remember my exact words. I told her, this will change everything. This will change the way my school is functioning. This will change my business. It will change absolutely everything. And I remember getting into a meeting with my partners, with my colleagues, and I told them, we need to make sure we learn this because this will change everything. But surprisingly, that same aha moment that I saw is not the case. And I've seen it with CEOs, with CHROs, with CLOs. They have not seen it. They have not seen that everything has changed. This is not a matter of it will change. It has already changed. So just as a thought, this year, in 1 month, we've had more commitments to AI funding than 2024 in the whole year, just in 1 month. When you have more funding, the models will get better, will get faster, will get more available. So it's a matter of how do we as learners, as leaders, know about what will change and how do we learn about that change. So I'm very excited because I will be teaching one of the modules within a new certificate with the Penn Graduate School of Education and ATD. So I will be teaching about technology. How do we leverage technology? How do we know more about tech, picking the right tools? And hopefully we will impact a generation of learners that will also be drivers of change. So we're very excited. It's a great program with some of the best faculty from Penn, from ATD. It's going to be amazing. I'm very excited. I will be also both in technology and also the international convention in Washington. You can see I can speak about technology and the impact for hours. I get very excited because we can change lives. It's one of those crucial moments in history when you can actually see the impact you make as a teacher, as a faculty member. Sometimes I get frustrated because I tend to question, am I doing something of value? Have I changed in some way? Have I improved the world or the lives of people in some ways? Well, now it's a matter of, yes, you can see this could have enormous impact in improving the lives of people, and especially people who had not access to great facilitators, great professors, great teachers. Now they can. So I'm very grateful for the time and for the opportunity to teach in the program, and looking forward to a lot of people participating.
Well, Julio, your excitement is contagious. I'm so thankful that you're on our podcast today and talking about these ideas and issues and trends, and encourage folks to check out the Talent Development Executive Certificate. Again, a program for rising TD leaders, for folks who want to lead the learning function in their organizations or at some point in their career. It's a collaboration between ATD and University of Pennsylvania Graduate School of Education, as Julio said. If you want to learn more, you can go to td.org/education/talent-development-executive-certificate. Or you could email me, it would be simpler, at Parker, APARKER, @td.org. And I'm happy to get you any information you'd like or connect you with the right people to learn more. So again, Julio, thank you so much for being here, and look forward to talking to you again in the future.
What a great conversation. Thank you so much. And thank you to all our listeners. Be forever learners.
Thank you for listening to this podcast by the Association for Talent Development. If you found this show insightful or useful, please be sure to like, subscribe, and share it with a colleague.